How were you diagnosed with multiple sclerosis? What symptoms led up to the diagnosis? I was diagnosed with MS at 39. 40 is usually the breaking point. If you can get past 40 without the diagnosis of MS, the chances of you developing MS is like literally slim to none. So it's like that 40 mark is like, boom, if you're going to be diagnosed with MS, it's going to happen before 40. I was right at the cutoff. Looking back, I had symptoms in my 20s, but I did not know what they were. But I think because over the years, I kept myself so healthy and I ate well and I exercised and I had a very active life, that helped to detour, I believe, the diagnosis. What brought on the massive symptoms that really led into the diagnosis was a lot of trauma. The pandemic happened. I came out of a very scary domestic violence situation that shook up my nervous system for many years. On top of that, I was transitioning into becoming a full-time entrepreneur. I was relocating. I survived the Texas ice storm for 7 days below 0-degree weather. Like, it was so much happening at one time that my body just could not take it anymore, and it just broke. What sent me to the hospital was my eyesight. I lost my eyesight and my eyes did this funky thing where one eye went in the air and the other eye went to the floor, and I looked crazy like this, which is a very common symptom of someone who maybe is having an MS relapse, is the eyes will be affected, and my eyes were affected. I scheduled a emergency eye doctor appointment. I went in trying to figure out what was happening to my eyes. At the time, I wore contacts, so I figured it was something related to wearing contacts or something. But thank God, the doctor that I saw happened to be a random doctor. It was like the one doctor I could find in Dallas that was available to take me that day. And she genuinely cared about what was going on with me. She could not figure out what was going on with me, but she came to the conclusion after speaking to a few other doctors that she thought I was having an aneurysm, and she immediately told me to go to the hospital. But she took it one step further and she told me what hospital to go to. She said, whatever you do not go to these hospitals, but go to one of these two hospitals. And the reason for this is because she knew that these two recommended hospitals had the latest technology when it comes to the neuro examination process. She knew I needed an MRI. She knew I needed my brain checked pretty much. And she was right. As soon as I got to the emergency room, I will say this, I ended up at Southwestern Hospital, which is a phenomenal hospital in Dallas. It's top tier, okay? Immediately when I got to the hospital, I did not have to wait long because of the type of symptoms that I was having, and they was neuro-based symptoms, and they rushed me back immediately. And thank God I also had two doctors that genuinely cared about what was happening to me, and they rushed me off to a MRI immediately within being there for like 30 minutes. One of the doctors already assumed what was wrong with me prior to the MRI, and he was right. He looked at me, he looked at my symptoms, he said, MS. I was so broken and torn down, and I couldn't even respond I couldn't even react to the news. Like, I just was so numb because it was such a crazy experience happening, and I couldn't feel anything at the time. I was so overwhelmed. They took me back to the MRI center, and I was in the MRI center for like 2.5 hours, and they brought me back and they told me and they confirmed that they suspect and believe that it was MS, and that they were going to keep me in the hospital for about 7 days to run more extensive tests. And thank God I was paired with a wonderful MS neuro doctor who ran every test that you possibly can run. I mean, they was taking so much blood, running so many MRIs, and they wanted to rule out anything else that it possibly could be. I had a spinal tap. It was top tier care, y'all, like top tier care. One thing that for sure I was blessed about is that normally when people have MS, it takes years for them to get diagnosed. It only took me those 7 days. The doctor ran every test. He left no question. He left no page unturned when I walked out of that hospital. So it was my eyes at the end of the day. I did lose my ability to walk for a few days. I was considered a fall risk, so I had to be escorted to walk for a few days. But after my eyes started to come back into focus after a aggressive steroid treatment drip that they gave me for a few days, my eyesight started to come back. And I believe what happened is in the brain, the area where it may have had inflammation started to shrink. My eye function started to have room in my brain to kind of work properly. The damage to that area of the brain does not go away 100%. It's still in there, but it shrinks enough to where the goal is that you are able to get your functions back. And for me, I was able, and I'm able and have the function of my eyes. Are they 100%? No. But for the most part, I would say they're about 90% there. The interesting thing is when they did the CAT scan, they found other lesions in my brain. There wasn't a lot, but they did find 3 other lesions in my brain. So they had came to the conclusion that I had at least 1 to 2 or 3 past relapses in the past, but they may have been really small relapses that I didn't notice. Looking back over the years, I can remember and recall that there were possibilities where I had relapses, and had I known at that time, I would have known that they were relapses. People handle treating MS in very different ways. I do think diet and exercise is a really big component to keeping the MS at bay. However, I chose to also be treated through Western style medication as well. And so far that's been helping for me. My goal is and desire is to get off the MS medication. I don't want to be on the MS medication. At the same time, I need to learn more about MS and figure out what's best for me in terms of how I need to move forward. But for right now, exercise, diet, sleep, and my medication has been working phenomenal. If you know somebody who is struggling with similar symptoms, definitely advocate for yourself. Thank you for your question, and thank you for caring.